Have you ever tried to test your code only to be stopped in your tracks by an error message? It's frustrating, right? If that's you, then you're in the right place. Today, we're tackling how to create a Moq for IServiceProvider using Moq, and we'll show you exactly how to fix those pesky errors. I know how annoying it is when you're trying to write tests and you run into issues that seem impossible to solve. Trust me, you're not alone. This is a common challenge for many developers. Here's the specific situation we're looking at. One user recently asked, "How do I create a Moq for IServiceProvider to test my repository class?" They provided some code and mentioned they were receiving a not supported exception error. Sound familiar? If so, let's dig into this together and find a solution. So, what could be causing this error? The not supported exception usually indicates that the method being called is not set up correctly in the Moq object. We'll break it down step by step so you can figure out what's going on. And don't go anywhere. I've got a pro tip at the end that will help you avoid these issues in the future. To address the user's issue, we need to ensure that the Moq setup for the IServiceProvider is correct. First, the user should verify that the Moq for IServiceProvider is properly configured to return a Moq of IServiceScope. Next, the user should set up the Moq for IServiceScope. This Moq should return the mocked IServiceProvider when the service provider property is accessed. Now, the user needs to ensure that the IServiceProvider Moq is set up to return the IServiceScope Moq when createScope is called. This is crucial for the repository to function correctly. Finally, the user should check the setup for the configuration DB context. The Moq for IServiceProvider must return a valid instance of configuration DB context when getRequiredService is called. After making these adjustments, the user should run their tests again. This should resolve the not supported exception error they encountered. Did you know? The Moq library is named after the famous mockingbird because it allows you to create Moq objects that mimic real ones. It's a clever play on words. Now let's look at the answers provided by other users. An alternative approach suggested by a user is to create a service locator interface to simplify testing. They propose defining an iService locator interface that allows for easier mocking compared to directly using IServiceProvider. The Scope Service Locator class manages service scopes and provides a method to retrieve services. This design reduces complexity and enhances testability by allowing you to mock the iService locator instead of IServiceProvider directly. The user also provides an example of how to use the iService locator in a long-running task class, demonstrating its practical application in managing dependencies. That's all on that answer. Let's take a look at another one. An alternative approach provided by another user involves creating a scoped service provider using a helper method. This method sets up a Moq for IServiceProvider, allowing you to define services and their implementations easily. In this method, you can define multiple services by passing them as parameters. The Moq for IServiceScope is also created, which returns the scoped service provider when requested. Let's check out another perspective from a different user. An alternative approach shared by another user involves using AutoFac to simplify mocking. They focus on mocking the getService method, which always returns a mocked instance. This allows for easy adjustments to the mock behavior using the freeze method. In their example, they create a class that utilizes the mocked service provider. The unit test is set up using a fixture that customizes the service provider and mocks the iPerson repository to return a specific person when queried. Additionally, they define a custom service provider customization class to handle the setup of the service provider and service scope, ensuring that the mocks are injected correctly. Let's take a moment to review another user's answer. An alternative solution comes from a user who created a Moq implementation of iService Collection and IServiceProvider. This allows for testing the startup configuration and ensures that all types are properly registered in the dependency injection container. They also mention a NuGet package called Moq Provider, which provides these mocks as singletons for each registered type. The code is available on GitHub under the MIT license, making it free to use and contribute. That wraps up that answer. Let's move on to another one. An alternative approach shared by another user involves using a school executor class to simplify database interactions. This allows for direct mocking of database responses, making testing easier. In their implementation, the user suggests modifying the API resource repository to accept an IS school executor instance. This way, the repository can call the school executor for data retrieval, enhancing testability. Additionally, the user mentions using an in-memory database for testing, which allows for easy setup and teardown of test data. Here's the pro tip I promised. Always ensure your mocks are set up correctly before running your tests. This one habit can save you hours of debugging. And there you have it. You should now be able to create a mock for IServiceProvider without running into that pesky error. Remember, proper mock setup is key. If you found this helpful, hit the subscribe button for more tips and don't miss our bonus pro tip on effective testing strategies.